Okay, I want to jump into the story of Esther. That is a wonderful story, and Esther in Hebrew actually means hidden. And so when I stop and think about my own self, Esther is humble. I don't feel very humble at times. Esther is kind of hidden. I kind of like to be out there. Esther's quite a modest soul. So I kind of want to begin this way. I begin with a little confession. This week, I had something happen to me twice, and I've never worn running shoes to church till today. And, Kendra knows the story. So I put my favorite shoes on top of the car. I drive a Ford. And I'm driving down to the hospital, and next thing you know, I'm on balsam. I think at first I saw one shoe go, and then the next rate, then another shoe. So I did a little U-E, and no cars ran over them, so my shoes were all good. I said, well, Lord, you're really talking to me this week. It's kind of like slow down time. So I was feeling really good on Friday. I had had a service at Wall-Custons, and I had a little break, and I thought, I needed to go back to the church to get a few things. So I said to the funeral director, I'll be back. And again, I was organizing my life, trying to, So I put the shoes up there again. I had a coffee in the other hand. I said, John, there's one thing you're not doing today. You're feeling so you're not forgetting your shoes again. So I drove back down just to do a little burial because the luncheon had been on at the Wall-Custons. And I'm driving actually a lot calmer than the day before because I got all the way downtown and the funeral director came out and said, you got a pair of running shoes on top of your car. So I'm slowing down a bit, but I've got to think things through a little bit more. There was a young man came into my congregation a long time ago, 30 years ago. He sang in a choir every Sunday, and he was the favorite in the congregation, no doubt, because he has a good voice. Not too many people who are like 17 in church every Sunday. And he was valedictorian of the high school. We're in a small town. I'm only like 27, 28 years of age. And I'd known a few gay people in my life through theology and circles, and came to my life, and I think about him today because I think about Esther. Esther is totally in this foreign land. She might be beautiful, but she is hiding the fact that she's Jewish. My friend looks to me, a young man, and says, I've told nobody in the world about this, and I don't even know what to do with this, except that I'm a gay man. And the last thing I want to do is tell anybody in my family or in the church or anywhere because I'm gay and I know what will happen to me. We're talking, friends, over 30 years ago. And I looked at him and I said, you know what? You might be gay, but you're the most wonderful human being I've ever known, and I have no problem with you being gay. And I said, in fact, if it was my belief, I think one day I wouldn't be surprised if you're Prime Minister of Canada. Now, he's not Prime Minister. Don't get fooled by that one. But and I think about him and Esther. So here's the deal on Esther. She might be beautiful, but don't make any assumptions about that. She's sexually exploited. She is been chosen for her beauty to be with the king. And I just want to think today about the countless number of women I've known in my life, in my circle, and working with the sexual harassment work I've done in the conference, now the region. It's frightening how many women have been assaulted, sexually abused throughout the world, not just here in Canada. I think about Esther. And I think too about anybody who is just trying to survive what they're going through. A daughter teaching high school right now has the toughest class imaginable to be teaching. And, there should probably be 15 in her class. There's 35. And I said to Chelsea the other day, I know that teaching is very hard right now. Have you given up on being a teacher? She said, no, but my heart breaks because I have a class of 35. And almost all these kids, not only do they have learning challenges, and they shouldn't be 35 in a class, but they have lousy home lives. They have parents that don't care. That's why they're smoking marijuana. That's why they're swearing around their teachers. And So the complete message for my daughter as a new teacher, third year in, is her heart breaks for students right now who are on the edge. Not blessed with a family maybe like mine where I always felt loved. So how do you give thanks when times are tough? And I hear it through a daughter that says she gives thanks for small little miracles that happen when she sees a glimmer of hope in a student because maybe they got some food at the school because they're not getting fed at home. Maybe they felt affirmed by a teacher, not judged, as Wendelin said. They felt loved and accepted. Queen Esther's life is a life that she could have been one of self-pity. She suffered greatly. She could have sunk in a hole and just said, my life is too tragic. But one of my favorite family therapists, Sarah Gulfrin, a Jewish woman, has given me 5 thoughts on Esther and why she's such a modern-day woman of faith for all of us. And so I'm going to borrow. Sarah now is living in Connecticut, but at one time she did her doctorate in family therapy in Texas. She raised her kids in Israel, and I just love listening from this woman's perspective as a Jew, how she sees this story, and I think it relates deeply to us. Number 1, she says, everyone's going to have obstacles in life, and you have a choice when you face an obstacle. And she took her suffering as a woman who was orphaned, certainly sexually exploited by the king, and she stepped into the palace in the power of her time, and she didn't back down from it. Number 2, Esther teaches us that it's actually very important to live for something greater than yourself. The more you're focused on your own happiness and what my life is all about, the less we'll ever be connected to the God that cares about everyone. So she didn't get caught up in the luxuries of the palace. She could have just continued being hidden and just being hidden. A Jewish girl that's beautiful. But she reached out for help. Number 3, a lesson for all of us. Number 3 is Uncle Mordecai. She reached out for his help. Haman in this story, Haman is like the evil guy. He's the Hitler. Haman is convinced the king that the Jews should be massacred. And interesting enough about Haman, he actually ends up being hung when the king incorrectly thinks that Haman is sexually coming on to Esther. He really wasn't, but the king hangs Haman. So the bad guy in this story ends up kind of getting just desserts because he was a very cruel man. But most importantly, Esther reached out, Uncle Mordecai, who was humble but a man of faith. Number 4, Esther, she had a faith that was persistent. She didn't give up. And her faith was so wise and is a remarkable part of the story. She comes to a point where she asks Uncle Mordecai, she asks that the Jewish community fast 3 days for her. Can't imagine that, 3 days, no food. Fasting for 3 days, but most importantly as well, to pray for her. So take that note for your own journey. A lot of us feel that we can do it on our own. And I think the truth of the matter, we can't. I wouldn't be in ministry today without 25 years with a group of colleagues, Presbyterian, Baptist, Anglican, doesn't matter what church. They, over a cup of coffee or some cheese and crackers, these guys, once a month, they challenge me and they affirm me. They love me. We all need to be supported, and Esther knew that. Number 5, this is a challenging one, and it's a mysterious one, I think, in some ways. The psychotherapist Sarah says the 5th lesson that Esther teaches us is fighting evil by inviting evil to the party. Now that sounds very strange. It's interesting. Jesus did say, love your enemies. Often we can't overcome destructive habits. They're addictions. They're, drug issues. They are stronger than we can even imagine. And so what this psychotherapist is saying is, we like Esther, can almost trick our problems. And she tricked Haman into coming to the party. That's where Haman actually got in trouble, ended up dying. So she says, use your anger to fight for justice. Use your beauty, she says, to build a home. Use your pleasure to connect deeper with yourself and others. And so let me close with this. It was a fun closing. Purim, P-U-R-I-M, is the Jewish festival of every April in the spring. And the reason why they celebrate this festival is that this story celebrates that the Jews were not killed and massacred. And so they remind themselves in Purim, we're going to have a party. Actually, one Jewish scholar argues, you'll get a kick out of this one. He argues it's the only place in the Bible that not only does it justify, it almost mandates that you overdrink wine. You actually indulge. Now, my alcoholic friends are going to have challenges with that one. I get that. But no, he's arguing you're really supposed to celebrate. We were saved. We were not killed because of Esther's courage and her faith. That's what Purim's about every spring. So next time you're around with a Jewish friend, or ask them about Purim and about this celebration of Esther. And let me close with this. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that every single one of us here today knows an Esther in your life. You might even be an Esther yourself because you have courage. You've sought the help, sometimes professionally or for the help of friends. You've overcome the obstacle. You've not run away from it. You've been persistent in your faith. And even when evil's been facing you right in the eye, you've reached out to it. And it's been transforming for your life forever.